Hey everybody, old school comic book reviews. Okay, this time I have a random comic book. This is Vigilante number 13 from 1984. The story is by Marv Wolfman. The art is by Kane. Vigilante was a character that debuted in the New Teen Titans that Marv Wolfman was doing with Gil Kane. The character was a guy named Adrian Chase. He was kind of this hard-boiled district attorney, but when there were cases or things that he thought were too tough, or things that were criminals were getting off or somehow escaping justice, he became the vigilante. He's basically just this kind of street level guy with a couple of guns and his two fists and things like that. I know some people have kind of compared him to being almost like DC's Punisher character. That's close. He's not quite that quite that hardcore, but that's close enough, for our purposes here. This particular story, was pretty much a murder mystery. Basically, a businessman ends up dead in the beginning of the issue. There's a couple of suspects. Maybe it's the wife who's having an affair. Maybe it's his business partner who was embezzling money. The cops, put it on the business partner, even though, of course, the business partner professes his innocence. Adrian thinks that, well, this is just a little bit too neat, too easy, too pat, so he begins investigating on his own. As the issue goes on, you get to see Adrian as the vigilante, run afoul of the police because, of course, he's investigating in this illegal way, and the police don't trust vigilante, and so on and so forth. Adrian does some more detective work. He figures out what really happened. There's a chase scene at the end, and then the issue ends in a pretty neat way, and you kind of get this there's sort of a twist. You kind of get this kind of downbeat ending. It's not really a sad ending, but it's kind of the moral is all this sort of kind of like the evil that men do, or whatever. I'm trying to find the last page quote here. It says, "And it worked too. Everyone, even the innocent, had suffered." It's a pretty interesting comic. It's a little bit different than what you got out of a lot of superhero comics that they were doing at that time. It kind of almost has this sort of old school cop show or detective show feel to it. Back when you had stuff like I don't know, whatever, Kojak or Starsky and Hutch or Streets of San Francisco, or in the 80s it kind of went more towards like Hunter and things like that. I'm trying to think. I can't remember what the exact year Murder, She Wrote debuted. But the point is, Quincy was on. I remember Quincy. But the point is, you had these detective shows where the formula was usually somebody died, then you had a list of suspects, then there was the red herring, and then there was the reveal. And, depending if it was more of a cop show or detective show, or if it was an amateur sleuth show, you might have had a chase scene or action scene. And that, that's pretty much how this issue unfolded. So, it wasn't particularly groundbreaking story-wise, but, it's a fun, tight little story, whatever. Now, one thing that's really good here is you got some really, 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 really nice Gil Kane art here. Gil Kane has passed away, but he was an industry veteran for many decades. I know he helped usher in the Silver Age over at DC. He was the artist on some of those early issues of the Hal Jordan Green Lantern. He was a regular artist on the Ray Palmer Atom that was coming out at that same time. Eventually ended up over at Marvel. He worked on, things like Spider-Man and, a few other characters. And at some point, he was doing a majority of the covers for Marvel, like back in the mid-70s. Like, there was some point whatever, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, something like that, where he was doing almost all the covers. Matter of fact, he was doing almost all the covers that Jack Kirby wasn't doing, because Jack Kirby, when he came back to Marvel, was doing a ton of covers at that particular time as well. But he's one of those guys that if you've seen like arbitrary old school Marvel comics from that time period, you've seen his art. And it's just really cool. You've got some cool layouts, you got some nice compositions here. And what's really cool is Gil Kane's, really dynamic anatomy, and especially when the action scenes come in where, everything's where it is, but of course it's exaggerated comic book art. So he's just, the characters just, if there's an action scene or something, they just throw themselves, they just completely throw their, bodies into the action, and you feel that when you're reading it, that you're in the right there in the middle of it, you know what I mean? You're in the middle of this whirlwind or this hurricane of, fists and feet and what have you or whatever. And he was also an excellent draftsman. Sure, he could draw nice superheroes, but he could draw all sorts of realistic things as well, just not just the figures, but also the backgrounds, the cityscapes, a room with furniture in it, you know what I mean? I kind of had a conversation with my buddy Phil, pretty recently, where we were talking about how a lot of artists these days will use like Photoshop or whatever for, backgrounds and whatnot. And, that wasn't what Gil was doing. Gil was in there with his pen and ink, and he was just putting it on the paper, So that's it. You can probably find this issue if you look for it, reasonably cheap if you, flip through the back issue bins or whatever. Or even if you order it online somewhere, I don't imagine, you could get a decent copy for, $2, $3, $4, you know what I mean? So, that's it. I gotta thank you very much for listening. Leave whatever comments you want. Thanks, and you have a good day.